draw for this young lady. After yesterday's episode of 4 stages of that, I was talking about light. It's a bit burnt out with the. I see it better. No. The light started bouncing off it. Anyway, the intention with that one was, I was saying at the time, I wanted to paint my creative painting, something that was maybe something I could do as a paint. Sorry about the chair again. It's back to squeaking. It wasn't squeaking the legs. It's back to squeaking. I'm going to try and find a chair that hasn't got squeaky legs. Anyway, so I am now going to try and draw a painting. The idea of it being some kind of, rather than face drawing type of thing. I'm thinking in terms of prints, and I've got this thing that maybe people don't want. Maybe they want that's the kind of thing you might have on a wall, but you won't want somebody staring at you. You know what I mean? Or something that somebody you don't recognize, or something like that. I can understand. Maybe things like that might work, but it's a strange thing to have on your wall, isn't it? So that's the plan. So that's hence this more. Stylized subject. I think that's probably what it is as well, sort of stylized design thing. And a little bit of the of yesterday's, the light thing as well. I think that's probably something that is kind of featuring this. I'm trying to get everything in the right place. Hold on a minute. I can work out roughly where things are going to fall. I can then make them a little bit more solid. This is a piece of charcoal that I think it actually worked. Sometimes I drop on pieces that work. This might be one that's worked. So let me just look at this as a big shape. I make no bones about the fact that I use the side of the paper to give me an idea of location and position and stuff. Yeah, I think that's about where things are going to end up. And I can just thinking about the way that this hits. It kind of hits the top of paper. As I said, it's a design thing. So I'm going to try and focus on that. I'm recording this as well, by the way. So if it goes down, I'll be using the recording. I'll be using the recording anyway because the sound's better. YouTube's got the streaming problems that YouTube has. It's terrible. So I'll be editing this after I've finished, and the sound quality will be better. But if you're watching it for now, then you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to push the face a little bit further that way. I'm just looking at this distance here, and I can't really go further back with that because I've got this to there, and then that comes into there. But I'm going to have to push everything a little bit further this way. Because because of the tonal and I said tonality then, but because the whole thing's a tonal, you know what I mean. The whole thing's tonal. There is no, it's not a kind of a linear thing. So I've got room to move and sort of use tones to define edges as opposed to trying to worry about the exactness of outlines. One of the things I see a lot of people do is the kind of shadow map thing, I think it's called, where eye sockets and large tonal shapes are defined as dark, almost like geometric things. I don't really do that. I don't really think that I'm going to benefit from. I mean, what I do is they are contrasty, shape dependent, contrasty. Almost like notan type of things. I love all that. I'm going to have a go at doing that, because I've seen somebody paint using notan, and I think it's fabulous. So I don't know whether or not. You see, one of the things that concerns me is that, and that's what I've just said to you. I'm going to have a go at it. That's what concerns me. I think and I tried to do that with I tried to talk about this with the constructive style thing of the week. The problem is that I've got is that if it's a deliberate thing, and I'm pretty sure it's a hang up from the illustration days. If it's a deliberate thing, for notan or whatever it might be that I decide I'm going to do, it's a deliberate thing, and I'm more interested in the arrival at somewhere I didn't predetermine. Sort of it contradicts the idea that I'm going to do a notan and I'm going to create a style or whatever. The idea that contradicts the things I say about not having an expectation, because it is exactly that. It's an expectation. So whilst I like all the notan thing and people painting in that way or drawing in that way, I think I'll just let the thing manifest in some way in what I do, as opposed to trying to create something that specifically fits that criteria. It's a little bit like people adopting a style, so I'm an impressionist or whatever. It's a little bit like that. And as I said, my problem is that you can always fail when you've got an expectation. If that's not the truest thing. You can always fail when you have an expectation of something, but you can never fail. Expect nothing, no, it'll never fail. I'm not sure that's a good thing. My wife always says that if you expect nothing, you never let down, she says. I'm not sure that's a good thing. It's quite a pessimistic way of looking at things, but it's true. If you're I told you YouTube is a bit freaky. Sorry about that. That was a drop connection or whatever they want to call it. But yeah, YouTube is just not what it used to be, I'm afraid. I don't know whether or not it's to do with too many people using it, or I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, I was saying about if you're deliberately trying to do something, and as a result, and not yourself, you're doing it in a way that meets the criteria of how this is normally done, you may fail because of that, because we may not have the skills or the understanding or the desire to do it in a certain way. I want to be an impressionist sort of thing might not be enough for you to be an impressionist. Same as I want to draw him with notan, using a notan approach. I might not have the capability to do that. I don't think I want to do it, but you know what I mean. I might not have the skills or the vision to see in sort of such a simplistic way. But yeah, so the expectation thing is I think if anything, that's probably the secret to be able to do this. This idea that you're going to meet a criteria all the time, and what that does to you and your psyche and your development. That it's just it's almost like it's holding you back. It can hold you back, especially if you're like managed or nurtured by an individual who's good at it. I mean, it's like that's what they're good at, and if you do get yourself into it, I'm a master, if you like, you're inevitably going to do what they do. It's hard not to do what they do, but the problem with that is that it's first of all, you've decided you want to be somebody else, not yourself. That's a bad thing. That's a bad thing if you're an artist. And then secondly, you're never going to know what you're capable of until you allow yourself to be whatever it is you're going to be. Until you get. So I've said this before about teachers. I think if you're going to get a teacher of some kind, get a teacher that helps you to be you and not be them. The usual sort of courses that you find on here and on YouTube or on Facebook. Draw like me in 2 weeks. So all right. One woman's doing it at the moment. Now, it took me 19 years to be able to do this, she says. 19 years. The course is 5 weeks. And I've consolidated all what I've learned in those 19 years into 5 weeks. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh. It's probably a fantastic course. And what work's amazing. I mean, that's the thing. And this is the thing, we're all sucked into that, aren't we? I look at somebody's work and think, God, that's amazing. I want to do that. And no, I don't. And then it's it's just it's a trap. It's a trap. It's like, and bless them, these artists that do that don't mean any harm by it. It's not meant to be like that. They're trying to make a living, aren't they? That's what they're doing, and that, you can't knock that, can you? But I always think that with artists that have something to offer, and you're a learner, I mean, as I am, basically you just steal from what they do. Sort of, you just take on board their approach, and if it assists in some way, then fine. But I mean, obviously, there are things that they do that you won't need. So, that's it, and that's how it should be. I think that the trick is to know what you need and what you don't need. So as I say, I kind of say to everybody, just steal what you need from. I think that's probably what they mean by that great artists steal. What is it? I can't remember what the saying is. It's something like that. And, anyway, so I'm gonna now that these things are now starting to fall into the right place. Ear's not quite right, but as I start to increase the tonality, the density of the tones, I really need the charcoal to be soft and dense for this. I think what's going to happen is that it's going to be quite textural. I'll tell you what I was looking at the other day. I was looking at this woman when I'd done a print. She was selling prints, and it was a charcoal, but the face and, in fact, all of it was heavily worked. The surface of it was worked right into the paper, to the point where it looked like she'd been aggressively trying to remove it. She rubbed it right into the paper. And I think when I was doing that yesterday with the light thing, there is a with charcoal, there's a kind of textural level that you get to by doing that, and it's one of those things where it doesn't happen until it happens, until you start to work you probably can see it best on this one, on the background. You can see all this kind of thing here, maybe not, but there's a remainder, a left behind feeling about the charcoal. There isn't so much on the face because I don't really work it in. There's probably stuff up there that's doing it, but generally I like to leave the lines in. But sometimes with charcoal, this one might do it. Is you work it so hard that it almost becomes layers of texture, as opposed to the marks of charcoal, and that this might become one of those. I want it to be more a painting, as I said, than an illustration. So how much of it is outlined and drawn, and how much of it is implied will kind of determine that, the fact that it wants to be more painterly. But I don't want to get into sometimes you see these dark masses of charcoal and something within it there's an eye peeking out and all that. I don't want to get into that. But having said that, it'll be whatever it'll be. I can't really say exactly how it's going to turn out, other than the fact I want it to feel more like a painting than an illustration. See, a lot of the times when I'm drawing the faces, I'm drawing them to show people how to draw faces, or how I draw faces. It's not necessarily the idea that this might hang on somebody's wall. In fact, I never really think about that. But sometimes the face. You see, if you look at, say, Oliver Sin and people like that, they make their living on, I suppose, showing people how to draw portraits and how to use charcoal and things. So it is like mine, pictures of, drawings of faces, beardy old men usually with people like Oliver Sin, and that's it. That's the end game. I'm not sure that occasionally he does females, and he does some amazing kind of. I know I've seen him working in Florence and stuff like that. So he does some amazing and figurative stuff as well. But generally speaking, they are, the beardy men kind of usual charcoal subjects. But he does those because he's showing people how to draw. That's what he's doing, and because he's got quite a relatable process. You can see how he does it. He called it constructed portraits or something. It's all geared towards that, not really towards you're going to hang one of his charcoals on the wall. If you did, you'd probably be a fan of his work, as a portrait artist. But generally speaking, I think they're more, as I said, to illustrate his methods. And that's basically what I do. That's the reason I do things the way I do them. But I don't know. I was just thinking that wouldn't it be nice to do? You know what? I think really, and I'm going to do this in the next lesson we do on, what day is it? Sunday. So we're going to do design. We're going to talk about design, and I think the thing about drawing something to be a painting or hung on a wall, for instance. I mean, really, when I say drawing a painting, I'm talking about something that could be hung on a wall. I think that is designed to do that. So the composition sort of thing, which is probably no more than where the head sits on the paper, is the thing that's going to determine it's a painting or it's a drawing. That's the thing. So we're gonna go through that. If you're in the lesson on Sunday, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the painting side of things, the design side of things. Now, this charcoal was literally so far the only piece that's come out of the batch from the other day that's worked. So, and it's extremely soft. So when you see me applying lots of charcoal to it, you can see how soft. I'm not pressing. One of the things that I do like about, and I'll tell you this every time we talk about charcoal, is that it has to make a mark with no effort. That's the criteria. No effort, no pressure. One of the things the reasons for that is the application of tonal, or the manipulation of the tonal side of things, because of the gradual build-up of the tones, which is what I do. It's a gradual thing. It's not suddenly it's black or suddenly it's this grey. It's progressive. It sort of evolves. So gradually it evolves by me applying layers of charcoal. So I don't want it. I want it so that I can just let it glide over the surface and apply a layer of charcoal. That's what I want. So I stipulate with the charcoal that I make. I stipulate to myself. unless you make it like this, not good enough. Take it back. But that's it. That's the thing. If I'm going to buy some, I'm going to have to buy it that does that as well. And I did try some the other day. If you saw it, so that the wife had some when she was when she went to art college. We're talking, crikey, we're talking 50 years ago, right? She had some charcoal. She went to art college, did a foundation before she did fashion, and she had some charcoal on that first year. And this is it. That 50-year-old napkin and 50-year-old charcoal. And if you saw me using it, how poor this stuff is. I think it's willow. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty much certain that it's willow. Let me show you what it does. It's not the charcoal that my charcoal. It may be different if it was. So this is it. It may be different if it was. Mine, but it's not. I'm pretty sure this is not mine. It really doesn't apply much charcoal at all. In fact, what it does is probably take away what's already there. One of the things about charcoal when you're drawing hair is that you want it so that when you apply it, you see what it did there. It applies a layer of charcoal, but at the same time removing what was there before. Not all of it, but some of it, and you get when you're drawing hair, you can see how it's like creating the hair like strands. It looks like it's a great way to draw hair. So you want your charcoal to be able to do that. You don't want it to take away what's already there. You want it to add to what's already there, but at the same time blend with what's already there. Kind of like as I say, it's subtractive and additive at the same time. If it just takes away what's already there, then you're not getting the best out of the charcoal, or you're not get one of the, as I say, you're not taking advantage of one of the benefits of charcoal, which is that. So as I said, I think the Sunday thing will end up being probably based on this as well, if I can make it work. The other thing about the yesterday's was the background. I don't know if you've noticed that with the background. It was there was more about, when you're drawing the hair or drawing the face and you're talking about relationships of those shapes and those tones and things. Well, the background has the same relationship with the face as the elements of the face do. And it can be, when you're drawing the face and you're drawing this bit, or the ear relates to the chin and all that sort of thing. So you're looking, when you're drawing that chin there, you're looking at the way that sort of it meets up there. You're looking at the size of those things, looking at around there. Well, the background could do the same thing, not necessarily in terms of shapes, but in terms of the presence of the background. Maybe that's something that you think about if you were making a painting, trying to make the charcoal a painting, as opposed to it being an illustration of somebody's face. I was going to say that YouTube seems to have calmed down a bit now, but I might be tempting fate to say that. So if it now decides to fail, you know why. I've jinxed it. was talking about the final stages of yesterday's, and the images that I went through to find that one, because I wanted something that was specifically about the different kinds of light. When I was playing with this one, I was thinking about that, the manipulation side of it. I'll find an image. This was progressively or markedly lighter than this. And I really increased all the levels, contrast-wise, and the values and everything have been increased. I find that by doing that, it just makes the whole process of drawing a lot easier. I think it's just to do with finding the shapes to draw. It's that. It just makes them more apparent because they're darker. I used to think it was just about contrast, but I don't think it is just about contrast. There's a depth of relational tones, and so it's not just this is the way and it's really important to do it with color images, not with black and white images, because you can increase the tones on the contrast on a black and white image, and but when you're working in color and you change the values, it's more than just, as I say, more than just contrast. But the other thing as well is that, and it's important that it remains in color because of the way that the algorithms will strip out all the midtones. So you end up drawing something that's not got the full value range, and subsequently you'll find that impacts on the way you draw. And I would say that was not a thing, but I've drawn things and come back to the next day and thought, how did I see that? If you're doing this right, if you're observing with accuracy, you'll observe the finer points, the tonal aspects of the image. You will see them, which is, as I say, really why it's important that you work with color images, not black and white images. There's another aspect to that as well. I always think that it's when it's already black and white, it's kind of telling you what it's going to look like when you're finished, and it's in a kind of subliminal way. It says this is where you need to be. This is how it needs to be when you're finished, which is one of those expectation things that really it's not good. It's still going to do more damage, because it's as they sets this goal. And I would have said at one point that goals were a good thing. I've never really been a goal setter in terms of the business side of things when I was coding, but I can imagine goals being a good thing if you're doing this, or I can imagine people thinking doing this, setting goals to do this will be a good thing, but they're not. I'm love him or hate him, Jordan Peterson said goals and ideals become our judge, and that's exactly what happens. And they judge you, they judge you all the time. And the last thing you want is a goal and ideal, which is somebody else's ability, somebody else's art, being your judge. It's the last thing you want. It's back to this teaching thing again, not being taught by or having somebody else's approach as your yardstick. I use, if you notice, my finger more than anything when I'm fixing tones and things. But you've got to be careful of is the grease side of things. As soon as grease gets onto it in some way, there's some of it down here, so I'm struggling to fix it down there. But as soon as the grease gets onto it, it's really difficult after that to keep the it not breaking down in some way, or the tone that you're trying to work with not breaking down in some way. So just be careful of that. My biggest problem is this thing I've got in my hand now, because these are sometimes really oily, and when they are, you just get on your hands every time. This is not a bad one, but they can be very, very greasy, very oily, and I try. I mean, the hardest thing for me is to remember which finger's dirty, and I don't wipe them. When I was in Paris all those years ago, right, and the guys were doing the portraits. You've seen that. You've seen the paint. I've done a painting of the guys doing the portraits, and they were constantly. They worked in charcoals, in pastels, and they had towels over the knees, absorbing all the to wipe the hands, because they were constantly, and the hands were constantly coloured in whatever colour they were working in, and so they were doing that, and I never do that. I often thought about I should have a towel on my knee just to wipe my fingers when I get to. I just wipe my hands on my trousers. So I've got my jeans. My jeans I've got all. The wife keeps saying to me, "You gotta wash those jeans. You gotta wash those jeans. They're covered in charcoal." And that's what I do. I just wipe my fingers on the charcoal on my jeans. Not good, is it? That it's not very professional, is it? That should get a smock, like an artist smock, and just wipe my hands on that. I should just get a tea towel. I had an old tea towel. I can't remember what I did with it. I had an old tea towel I used to wipe my hands on, but I don't know what happened to that. But like I say, I try to remember which finger's got charcoal on, and or which finger's got the least charcoal on is usually what I'm thinking, not because they all end up like that, you see. What I'm trying not to do is to draw it. To do, the one yesterday was a little bit more drawn than this, so I'm trying to make it more suggestive. You can see how it's doing it now. I've got a problem with this. I often, I see this sometimes where people put lines. It's not a definite line there. So I really don't like that at all. Tones meeting, they just meet. There's no, you see it's better already. There's no line that says, right, that's it. That's a dead stop there. That's a dead. I've said this before, and people say, when they start talking about drawing with lines, I've yet to see a line in real life. It would be crazy, if you've seen that Loving Vincent thing, when you got all those artists to draw over the film in a Van Gogh style. That was just amazing. But you could see the lines. You could see the lines in everything. Incredible it was. And just a visual feast. It was just amazing. I can't remember, 120 artists, something like that. I remember them advertising for artists to do it. That's to be part of that. That's something, isn't it? That's something that you could say. I was part of the team of artists that created the Loving Vincent thing. Fancy that. Oh, that's something to tell your grandkids, isn't it? That? I mean, forever. That would be, you'd be, you don't need to worry about being a famous artist, because you actually were in touch with a famous artist, or were in touch with the soul of a famous artist. I think they did it with that snowman thing as well. Do you remember that? Walking in the air, that Christmas and be on the telly, so that But that's I think they did it with that. I remember seeing these two girls that had done exactly that. They'd drawn in that guy's style, the animated version of, the colour pencils and things. But I once saw that guy, and I talk about him. I can't remember his name, but I should do. But I talk about the film, the Albert and whatever, Enid and Albert, or whatever it's called, about his life when he told his parents he wanted to be an artist, and go to art college, and they broke down in tears because he wanted to be an artist and hated the thought. Working class parents never wanted the kids to be artists, which is what I suffered, and many more, and including him. And I once saw him. They interviewed him before he died, bless him, and it took him maybe 2 or 3 days just to do one illustration of fairly simple content. So, and he thought that was quick. He thought that was a good pace to work at. I suppose it's each to their own. It depends what motivates you. I mean, my motivation is I just want to do this all the time. If it transpires that it takes me days to do something, then that's fine. But as long as I'm doing it. But I tend, because of the nature of what I do, and I've told you about the connection and all the rest of it, because of that, it's more of a spontaneous human response that I'm interested in. That's what I'm doing. And that happens in seconds. I can assess somebody and detect their mood in seconds. And I'm not concerned with their eyelashes or the colour of their eyes. So because it's such a quick process that inevitably I end up trying to capture it quickly. If it became about the colour of their eyes and their eyelashes and all the rest of it, then maybe it would take days. But it's not about those things for me. I don't think portrait should ever be about those things, but obviously it is to many people, which is fine. I'm not a problem with that either. But if that's the way that you approach this, then I can imagine it taking a while and that being okay. For me, it's the spontaneity of it all, I think, in everything. The initial marks, the other marks, everything is about this spontaneous response. It's like combustion, you know what I mean? But as I say, I don't know why. Show this again. You see the size of that? When I started, it was quite long. Look how short it is now. I don't know why I feel like this about it. I had this idea that because I stopped for 30 years, I was trying to catch up. I don't think it's that. I think it's this spontaneous response thing. I think I am actually responding in the moment to something, and that's the main driver. My response to what's happening. Hold on a minute. And this is not happening. There you go. And I kind of feed on that. I feed on that response, on that in the moment response. I think that's probably why I'm quite accepting of the failure, the mistakes. The mistakes thing. I think the mistakes are really important. If I'm not making mistakes, then I'm taking too long. That's a bit daft to say that, but you know what I mean. It's like a sorry, I'm just trying to hold my breath while I do that. It's like an acceptance of what's going to happen. There's going to be some unexpected marks, and partly because I like unexpected marks. I like there are times when things happen when I'm not really in control of, and I want that. It's not something I can contrive, So you can see it's happening now on this. There's things on this that I'm not in complete control of, and I'm liking it. So that's probably the thing that spurs me on the most. Is this? Wow, that just that I've said this many times, but I don't know who said this. But there was somebody interviewed an artist, and he just said, "I want to continually surprise myself," and I thought that's a great thing. I want that. I want that. This is why I do I put things in folders and get every now and again get them out of the folders, because I look at them, I think I can't remember doing that, and that's exactly what I want. I don't want to remember doing something. I think some of these these skills that I've developed are inevitable. They're just part and parcel of that continual doing of it, and but I don't recall them. You know what I mean? I don't recall them the skills that I've developed, which is good. That's exactly what I want. I don't want it to be something that I can refer to as a construction process. I want it to be, I really don't know. You know that thing about you're going to teach your kids to drive, and you can't remember how to drive. Because you can't. It's just a habit. I want that. I want that. I want it to be in a place where I can't remember why I did it or how I did it. I just like what I did. I want to be there. But that's I don't know. I think a lot of people would say that's just not right. But I do think that that's where all the creativity is. It's in the unknown. The bit that you can't explain is the creative bit. The bits you can explain aren't the creative bit. They're just formulaic processes. The recipe. And there is no recipe to success, and there isn't a recipe to success. No, I don't know where that came from. That's Freudian slip, that I think. Freudian. But, no, there is no recipe for creativity, even though people think there is. Yeah, you can see what I mean about the painting thing, though. It's still got that. It feels like a painting. I think, you know what? I think one of the main things with this is the pose of the head. I don't think that anybody who's looking at the camera, directly at the camera, is going to be a painting. There are times, but those great paintings that are people looking straight at the camera, often, I think they come from, they're either some contemporary kind of defiant message type of thing. This is somebody looking aggressively at the screen or something like that. But there's a French guy that paints bits of people, that sort of waist down type of things. They're just off the chart. Bard or somebody. They're just off the chart. Those things are just. They're just designs, obviously, but there'll be a reason behind it. I think this is what I like about stuff like that. This guy's not really, he's arrived at that as a style, as opposed to being a contrivance. This is what I'm saying about the design thing. The design thing is like, you do something deliberately. When people do those little sort of thumbnails and then they break it down to say, right, the head's going to be there and then the arm's down here. That is a contrivance. But when it's a responsive thing and it still ends up in the same kind of, the head's up there and the arms, that's when it's really happening. That's the real style. But when it's contrived to be, that's what I don't like. It'll just like those I did, you know, those oil pastel things. They're just, like I said at the time when I did them, if I'd arrived at those styles and working like that after a few months or years of doing it in that particular way, or gradually in that way, then it'd been different altogether. They'd have been honest and pure and all the things that matter in art. But I didn't. I did them deliberately to show about, you know, to talk about constructive styles. I mean, the other thing as well that people will rest on is the realism thing. I saw somebody the other day drawing objects, shall we say. I can't tell what they are because you'll see her work. But and they were just hyper real, these things, and that's really all they were on a mantelpiece, and really well drawn, hyper realistic thing. And they became a painting because of that, because they were hyper realistic representations of these objects on a mantelpiece. Was it a style? No, not really. They would, because it's realism, and you know, this thing about skill, technique, style. Well, when it comes to realism or hyperrealism, it's skill and technique. Style it can't be, can it, really? Because it has to be realistic. It has to be realism. How they interpret things, or how they you know, the brushstrokes and all the rest of it are kind of irrelevant because they want to be invisible. They don't want to see the brushstrokes. And a lot of style is down to execution, not as much as anything else. So execution is perfection in realism. So, but like I say, people will fall onto realism as a way of creating painterly type subjects. There's another one, a lady who's a watercolorist who draws and paints cups and saucers. Fantastic skill, absolutely amazing. And they are, simply because of the arrangement of the crockery, they are a painting in a way. But it depends on the realism aspect of it. You know, it's the realism that makes it work. There's also somebody I know that does exactly the same thing, and they're not at all realistic, but they still look like paintings because of the design aspect of it. They're still heavily designed. So I don't know how far to go with this. Whether, as I said, I want it to be more of a painting than a drawing. So how far I go in terms of, you know, the detail of the dress and the tone of the dress, and whether or not it remains like it is now, quite deliberately unfinished. I quite like the unfinished thing, but when it's done on purpose, I don't like it. I see some people that unfinish things deliberately, and it just looks too deliberate. Yeah, I think apart from, I'm just going to, I quite like all the, you know, the things that haven't worked, this texture that's happening here, I like all that. This is what I was saying about the as you work the charcoal, and it starts to break down and do certain things. I like all that. I like this distressed element of it here, rather than it trying to be super smooth. I like the highlight that's not there at the top there. Yeah, so as I say, I'm going to just leave it as it is and just tweak it here and there, and tighten a few things up, and see what happens down here. I don't know whether or not it needs that, or whether or not it's just going to be left as it is. I don't know yet, but that's okay. That's fine. It's It's definitely in the direction that I was thinking, and I think I'll tell you why it's like that. It's because of the subject. It's because of the pose of the subject. I think it's just got that feel about it. I mean, I spend hours trying to find subjects. I'm now trying to find images of figures, full figures or half figures. I ain't got the room for full figures, and that's one of the criteria. I mean, I can find great images, but they'll not be lit properly, or the pose isn't quite right, or the hand's not in the right place, or whatever. And more often than not, when you analyze, because I take them into Photoshop, when I analyze the thing, desaturate it to look at it as if how it would look as a black and white image. Limbs, hands look like they're just dangling from the face, and that's one of my pet hates: the hands dangling from faces. So this is why I don't draw hands dangling from faces. Occasionally I put hands in. You've seen me do that, but I've got to find the right image to be able to do that, and that's not only possible sometimes. Like I say, I think that I'm definitely close to where I need to be with this. It's going to be the odd tweak here and there, I think, to just finish it off. Still, as I say, still not sure about that at all, because ideally, if I'm going to do this, I want to do the pattern that's in the pattern that's in a front there. So and then on the sleeve and things, but not sure yet if that's going to be her. Back to the illustration. My basic response is drawing, but that's probably why they always end up looking like illustrations, because my response is to illustrate. That's a curse of my past, I suppose. Anyway, I love you and leave you, and I'm going to finish this off, and then I'll stick it on the socials, and I'll catch you tomorrow.